Well, we've got a beefy one here. This is 32 minutes long. Welcome, folks. I am Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
What's up?
We're looking at Eternals Breakdown, Easter eggs and details you missed from New Rockstars. Thank you, New Rockstars, for allowing us to react to this. Very, very much appreciated. Y'all, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up to let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. Just for full disclosure, we watched Eternals once. We're gonna watch it again, hopefully tomorrow. I felt okay about it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It was just like, it was fine. And I've been very vocal about how it's just fine. And there's a lot of problems with the movie, in my humble, dumb opinion. We have a 3-hour live stream talking about the film to ad nauseum if you want to check that out. So there you go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Marvel's Eternals. A literally groundbreaking game changer with scale so epic that even the main characters are like, woof, do we need all of us for this? I loved how this movie redefined the mythology and the rules of the MCU, so I am gonna break this down scene by scene for all of the Easter eggs, visual details, cinematic influences, and deeper layers of meaning that you might have missed. By the way, you can support New Rockstars by checking out our Eternals-inspired latest Obsession shirt, Immortal Unity, with a really cool Art Deco design at newrockstarsmerch.com.
That is nice.
Available only for a limited time, though. There's also a fearsome Celestial shirt available. Check out all of our great options at newrockstarsmerch.com. The film opens with the words, "In the beginning." Just that text, simply on black, which, of course, the first 3 words of the Bible, establishing this film as its own book of Genesis origin story for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's mention of the universe's first son and ACHARA, a celestial, the god of this universe, and when ecological disaster wipes out our civilization so that all that's left is a Disney Plus subscription watched by a Wall-E robot, what advanced alien races think our god is too? This Star Wars-esque scroll says the Celestials came before the 6 singularities and the dawn of creation, referring to the Infinity Stones that Wong explained were created by the Big Bang, meaning the Celestials predated the Big Bang and might have created the Infinity Stones and were likely unaffected by Thanos' snap. The number 6, apparently sacred to the MCU, might have even been rooted in the Celestials having their 6 eyes. Celestials were Marvel Comics creations of Jack Kirby. They're giant armored space gods who created mankind on Earth alongside Eternals and Deviants. In Guardians of the Galaxy, we briefly saw the Celestial Eson the Searcher, and nowhere is the severed head of a Celestial, and Peter Quill's father, Ego, claimed to be a Celestial as well. Here we meet the 10 Eternals as they float past the sun in their ship called the Domo. In the Eternals comics, Domo was actually the name of an Eternal who administered the affairs on Olympia, answering directly to Zuras, Thena's father. Used to be a secretary, now he's a ship that gets wrecked. Nomo Domo. But we already know something is different about the Eternals origin story in this film because they arrived to Earth already manufactured. We later hear that they think they come from a separate planet called Olympia, when in the comics, the Celestials create the Eternals on Earth from genetic experiments alongside humans and deviants. And Olympia is a place on Earth as well.
Right,
Baby, do you know what that's worth?
This is the first time I'm hearing about the Eternals in the original source material being kind of born out of or emulated around what humans are. I kind of wish that they followed that. Maybe it doesn't matter and I'm overthinking it, but for me that would make more sense. The fact that they look the way they do, the fact that they have the accents and all that stuff, because if they're being formed alongside with the human race, doesn't that make more sense? Or does it just doesn't matter and I'm overthinking it?
I think both ways are applicable.
From the get-go, Icarus has a Scottish accent. Why?
Okay.
I'm just saying, like the Scottish accent didn't even exist back then. We're talking about the beginning of the human race, essentially, or the beginning of, I guess, technology, because they're showing up at Mesopotamia.
Correct. I think the reason that they have different accents and they look the way they do is because they're trying to represent humans as they become globally, right?
Okay.
But I totally see where you're coming from, which is in the beginning, wouldn't they all have looked the same? And it's just evolution that has made us the way we are, which gives us our skin color, our facial features, and our accents according to where we live. But unfortunately, a movie doesn't have that much time to kind of go into it. And so I buy into the pretense that they just came here on Earth and they have all of that already. But I do see what you're saying.
It just makes me wish all the more that this was a show instead. Kind of like Carbon, what's it called? Altered Carbon. In that show, it's like you can become other people over the course of the show. You know, your stack just moves. And like you could have a different accent. You could be played by a different actor altogether.
I see what you're saying and there is merit in that, but I just feel that it already convolutes a convoluted story. How do we make these concepts palatable to the majority of people.
Yeah, I get you. No, you're trying to simplify a very complicated idea.
Yeah.
I get it. Still, it would have been cool to see that play out.
Yeah,
Like
no.
the genetic experiment thing.
So seeing them just delivered here and then booted up, all just little clues that these are actually synthetic beings with no real genetic history alongside humanity, and were just fed this false narrative. Throughout all this, composer Ramin Djawadi scores the imagery with haunting organ music, evoking Hans Zimmer's organ score for Interstellar, both of which cast all this cosmic imagery with the tones of a church, inviting us to behold these sacred events with reverence and awe. The Domo looms into view upon ancient Mesopotamia, 5000 BC. Director Chloe Zhao's imagery, showing the Domo in profile as a rectangular shape, evokes the mysterious arrival of the monolith in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which symbolically served the same function as the Domo does here.
That's
Advanced
interesting.
Tech coming from above, allowing early humans to finally evolve. An amphibious deviant washes up, much like the seminal first fish that jumped from water to land in our evolutionary history. But unlike the deviants in the comics, these have a silvery, wispy anatomy, like the barbs of a catfish. It's gonna sting ya, and it's all strung together into these mythological forms like griffins and dragons. And notice how they come with a second set of eyes, 4 in total, which links them visually to the Celestials, whose helmets have 6 eye circles. The deviants just being 1 rung below from that. And then Eternals and humans 1 rung below that with just the 2 eyes. Just another cool detail hinting that the deviants were also crafted in the Celestials' image, and might have, in a way, at one point been preferred. This fisherman calmly tells his son to run, sacrificing himself to save his boy. It's just interesting how, despite the Eternals' divine gifts after gifts, really the best, most noble qualities about humanity are already evident in these humans. The Eternals help them repel the deviants, each using their powers in different ways. Like we see Icarus's flight and laser vision, Makari's super speed, Kingo's finger gun energy blast, Circe's matter transfiguration, Thena's casting of weapons, Gilgamesh's power punches, Phastos's tech assembly, Sprite's illusion casting, Druig's mind control, and then Ajax, last but not least, heals Icarus's wounds. And notice how whenever they use their powers, they all kind of take the same form. A glow of golden cosmic magic emanating from the contours of their armor, and actually you can even see Makari's trailing behind her as she
cool.
holds that boy to safety, almost like a puppet string. Just a way of showing how all of this is just rooted from the Celestials, like a string of Christmas lights, all strung from the same wall outlet. They say goodbye by giving this boy this dagger. This is actually a real-life ceremonial golden dagger recovered from the Sumerian port city of Ur in a royal tomb. So making this village that very civilization. The Sumerians were the earliest known civilization of ancient Mesopotamia, living among the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys, which was one of 4 major waterways on Earth that early civilizations arose upon, along with the Nile, the Indus, and the Yellow River. This film suggests that the spark that enabled all of human civilization to ignite was the Eternals' arrival. And Zhao frames that spark with this handoff, evoking Michelangelo's creation of Adam.
Oh, it does
God on
look
the
like
right,
that.
Man on the left. The Marvel Studios title card actually opens with a quick flash of Kirby's comic depictions of the Six-Eyed Celestial. We also see Shang-Chi added to the M of Marvel Studios. And then we hear the music of Pink Floyd's Time, the opening track to their epic album Dark Side of the Moon. Really the best song to just space out to.
The knife itself, is that symbolic of anything other than technology? Is this just the seed of technology? Is that the idea with the knife?
I think so, yeah, and it's just kind of this cool link to an actual real knife that was, discovered.
In history, yeah.
Yeah, in history.
Lyrics lament losing track of time, kicking around on a piece of the ground, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Just like how the Eternals have been stuck on Earth, burning time, centuries, millennia, waiting for further instructions from the Celestials. Circe's now in London, working at the Natural History Museum, where that Sumerian dagger is now a relic on display. On her way into work, she greets Charles Darwin, whose theory on evolution might have been eternal inspired. She also gives an apprehensive look at a dinosaur fossil, almost as if these previous apex predators on Earth might have become prey to their mortal enemies, the deviants. In a classroom, Dane Whitman quotes the poet Walt Whitman. In this broad earth of ours, amid the measureless grossness and slag, enclosed and safe within its central heart, nestles the seed of perfection, going on to say that the poet's optimism in humanity echoes our recent universal victory, the return of half our population. Of course, he's referencing the events of the blip in Avengers Endgame, but also this quote foreshadows how in our Earth, within its heart, nestles the seed of a celestial.
That's what I was
of course,
thinking.
lectures about apex predators, foreshadowing the return of the apex predators, the deviants. Then at Dane's birthday party, Circe gives Dane a ring that he notices from the Middle Ages, and it bears a raven emblem. Dane Whitman becomes, in the comics, the Black Knight, a successor to a long line of warriors who all bear the ebony blade, the first bearer being Dane's ancestor, Sir Percy of Scandia, who lived during the reign of King Arthur. Cersei says this raven is his family crest. In the comics, Black Knight's chestplate bears a raven emblem. Dane asks Cersei,
"Are you a wizard, like Doctor Strange?"
I'm super normal.
Cersei's powers come from the Celestials, but the eldritch magic of Doctor Strange and the sorcerers may very well come from the same source. Later, actually, Cersei transfigures a boulder into birds, visually similar to how Doctor Strange turned one of Thanos' attacks into butterflies in Infinity War. The Deviant attacks them in Camden Lock, and Sprite tries to distract it by casting duplicates of herself and Cersei. Though notice how when the Deviant knocks her down, it breaks the illusion and the duplicates fade away. Now, Sprite's duplicates aren't tangible like the duplicates that Loki can cast with his sorcery. So Icarus arrives to help, and Cersei turns a crashing double-decker bus into rose petals. Cersei finally admits to Dane the truth about the Eternals' history, claiming her understanding that she came from a planet called Olympia, and Dane asks,
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, or all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
She goes on to say that had they protected humanity from everything, mankind would never develop the way that they were meant to. And to be clear, Thanos is an Eternal born with a deviant gene. He is the son of Alars, who was brother to Zuras, Thena's father, and Thanos was also the brother to Eros, aka Star Fox, as confirmed in the post-credit scene. But it sounds like these Eternals were kept in the dark, mostly on Earth, so they would probably have no reason to know Thanos' Eternal or his deviant lineage. Dane hears the name Icarus and cites the Greek myth of Icarus who flew too close to the sun, and Cersei confirms that Sprite made up that myth when they were in Athens. So all of the Eternals really have analogs in real-world history, like Icarus inspired the tragedy of Icarus, Athena inspired Athena, Greek goddess of war and leader of Athens, Phastos inspired Hephaestus, Greek god of the forge, Circe inspired Circe from Greek mythology in the Odyssey, who transforms humans into animals, Ajax inspired Ajax, the hero second only to Achilles, Gilgamesh inspired the great Epic of Gilgamesh from Sumerian mythology, considered the oldest narrative of human history, Sprite inspired figures like sprites from European mythology, but also, as stated in this film, Tinkerbell, which is a nod to the comics, in which Sprite actually visits playwright J.M. Barrie and inspired him for his character of Peter Pan. Kingo may have been linked with Kingu from Babylonian mythology, and Druig doesn't really seem to have a mythological link, but his name does sound like the Russian word drug for friend, maybe the way he sees himself as a friend to humanity.
I just thought it was more of like druid, like he's a sort of like a wizard.
That is applicable as well.
I like how the Eternals have kind of influenced the real world. I almost wish that they'd kind of gone into that a little bit more in the movie, but I guess we just didn't have enough time.
So Cersei has the ability to turn people into animals, is what he said here. But she's turning objects into animals, is what it looks like. Or I mean, she turned the bus into flowers. She turned the rock into birds.
Cersei in Greek mythology, I thought, was the goddess of magic.
Is this a mistake or just a different thing?
What I know about Cersei actually comes from Percy Jackson.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But I mean, it's pretty legit.
Which might be its own interpretation of Cersei. Is that what you're saying?
The whole thing is it is actually based on Greek mythology, but it's written in a way that is super accessible to like teens and kids. I don't think that what he's saying in the books is wrong. He talks about Hephaestus as well, and that's exactly the same. Yeah, he is the Greek god of the forge, and his superpower, or I guess the thing that he's known for, is for making things. Yeah. He is the maker, and so like it makes sense that Phastos inspired Hephaestus.
But back in Cersei and Sprite's flat, MCU news outlet WHIH shows back up on the TV, reporting on the global earthquakes, and Sprite unsheaths this blade, the same blade she later uses to stab Cersei in the back during the final battle. We flash back to the city of Babylon in 575 BC. The film actually reconstructed the famous Ishtar Gate, currently on display at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, and after they slay this deviant, Ajax is summoned by the celestial ACHARA the judge. I love how visually Koay Zhao achieves this awesome scale with ACHARA's whole design, asteroids and other space dust orbiting his massive form. Also notice how his armor in many places appears scratched, crumbled, weathered, giving him a semblance of age and life experience, at least compared to Jemiah's cleaner armor in the later shot. Like, these might be battle scars from kind of conflict that left Nowhere beheaded. This first shot of ACHARA actually only shows part of his enormous head. Like, it's impossible for us to take him in all at once, but they personify him only through his voice and these 6 glowing eye holes. So later in the film, as TIAMUT emerges and ACHARA returns in judgment, just those 6 eyes alone signal to us how massive these things are in full. Now, the Domo is parked inside of the city of Babylon, inside the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. 2 other ancient wonders, the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Pyramids of Giza, appeared in the MCU in Loki.
This is the second time I've heard Eric Voss mention the battle scars of
ACHARA the judge.
ACHARA the judge. Has he talked at all or hinted at a potential war that is coming with the Celestials? I wonder if some part of the upcoming story is that you've interfered with this and you're hindering our ability to fight this threat that's coming. I don't know what that threat might be. I have no idea. I'm just
I don't know.
conjecture.
I don't think he's ever mentioned that.
At the feast, Sprite regales them in what sounds like the actual Epic of Gilgamesh as Makari barters for the Emerald Tablet, which is a real-world relic containing cryptic hermetic text, which has been obsessed over by Islamic and European alchemists who associated it with the Philosopher's Stone as a means of producing gold, but it contains the famous derived passage of "as above, so below," which is interesting to think about the context of the Celestials, right? As they are above, so they are below our feet, sleeping. And that celestial, TIAMUT, begins gold, but is turned back into an elemental form of marble stone. Ironic, considering Dane calls Circe King Midas later on. Icarus and Circe declare their love for each other, they get it on, and they get married in the Gupta Empire of Impia in 400 AD. There's actually a quick shot of the Great Wall of India at Kumbhalgarh, the 2nd longest wall in the world after the Great Wall of China. I like how in the shot of the other Eternals cheering on their wedding, Sprite looks pissed with envy, of course, and Athena gives an apprehensive stare as she never fully trusted Icarus. Circe, Sprite, and Icarus arrive at Ajax, South Dakota ranch. Icarus is the last one to walk up though, probably since he knows what they're gonna find there. Then the Speaking Sphere floats up from Ajax's corpse to Circe, and now ACHARA tells Circe, "It's almost time to be disqualified." Then we flash back to Tenochtitlan, sorry if I said that wrong, 1521 AD. This was the great capital of the Aztec Empire that was sacked by Spanish forces led by conquistador Hernan Cortez in this year. Another important historical turning point in human history. It allows Spain and other European powers to end up dominating the Americas. Thanks, smallpox. Oh my God, I just realized that's the same way Florida's gonna conquer all of us. Anyway, seeing these Spanish soldiers wipe out the Aztecs with firearms, the Eternals debate intervention, and then Athena suffers a breakdown from mad weary, which they later define as one's mind fracturing under the weight of memories. Like, you know, anytime you think about high school and the spiraling begins, we're all gonna die. Ajax offers to wipe Athena's memory, but Gilgamesh says he will seclude her and watch over her, and then Druig splits off by making the Spanish and Aztecs drop their weapons and follow him into the jungle. They track down Kingo on the set of a Bollywood film in Mumbai, and he tells them his movie is The Legend of Icarus, thus his costume matching Icarus's old design, and he introduces my favorite character in the movie, Karoo.
Actually, when we first met, he thought I was a vampire, and he tried to stake me through the heart.
I've apologized so many times.
Not quite enough times, very close to
I guess another MCU vampire mention after one we heard in Loki.
You know, we brought in Kree, Titans, vampires. Why is it the 2 orphan demigods are such a pain in the ass?
Just interesting how vampires are increasingly becoming a thing in the MCU, setting the stage for Blade to exist at some point. A promise that gets delivered in the final seconds of the post-credit scene with a vocal cameo by Mahershala Ali as the MCU's Blade. Kingo joins them despite having a sequel to shoot, and he mentions how they just got BTS to do a cameo, which I feel like has got to be a meta nod to the pop star cameo in this movie's post-credit scene of a superhero franchise. On Kingo's private jet, he collects Captain America's original shield from the first Cap film. He also shows his movie posters in which he posed as multiple generations of his own phony dynasty, like his great-grandfather, his grandfather's father, etc. The movies include titles like Yuva Prim, Taliko, Kel, and Phantom Gun. Looks like a 007 type movie. But notice how he changed up the facial hair of each generation. And if you think about it, this would have been under 100 years of history, so 5 generations means that Kingo refused to wait too long before reintroducing himself as like a younger, better looking son. It's so funny. He like craves the spotlight that much. Cersei tells Kingo in Karun's documentary that she can turn rock into water, rock into wood, and rock into metal. Could be a bit of foreshadowing in the final act when she transformed the gold-colored metal back into marble rock, but also maybe you could see this as a way that she could have helped turn rock into vibranium, with her and Phastos helping the Wakandans in various ways. In Australia, they find the corpse of a deviant that Gilgamesh had killed recently. Karun thinks it's beautiful, showing how beauty truly is a matter of perspective, but also making me suspect that Karun could be a Skrull who on the Skrull planet evolved from the deviant race.
That would make so much more sense as to why Karun couldn't give any less fucks about the fact that his boy wasn't gonna stand and defend the human race.
Right, yeah, we went into that a lot during the live stream discussion on this movie. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's like, you know, the planet is gonna like be destroyed and you're just like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna follow my master.
Yeah, because Karun was such a dope character throughout the film. I mean, he was comic relief and he's got that like fun energy. He's sort of us, the audience, who's just like a fan of these guys, right? When Kingo doesn't decide to take a stand against Icarus, the fact that Karun says nothing, he's just like, oh, well, thank you, I'm a big fan, bye, and doesn't like turn his back on Kingo is just like, it doesn't make any sense. But if he is indeed a Skrull, then I can forgive it. And I'm really, really hoping that that is the reason why.
That would make a lot of sense for sure.
It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Karun just never comes back. If it never turns out that he's a Skrull, like, that wouldn't surprise me even a little bit. But I do hope that that's the reasoning. It was just like weird. Like, why wouldn't you that seemed like a lost opportunity to increase the depth of Kingo's character. Like, have him have his own arc and whatnot.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
Keep an eye on that one. Gilgamesh compares Karun to Alfred in Batman, one of two references to DC superheroes in this movie.
Dad, that's Superman with the cape and you're shooting laser beams out of your eye.
Now, obviously the MCU references external pop culture all the time, but DC references in particular almost never come up in the MCU since Iron Man in 2008, aside from a very quick Super Friends reference in Iron Man 3. But as I explained in a recent video and confirmed by director Chloe Zhao, Eternals is all about embracing superhero mythology in general, like famous DC characters and characters like Thor, all rooted in our world and in this world in historical folklore and Jungian archetypes. Then suffering a bit of mad weary, remember.
That's a little bit disappointing. I was kind of hoping that was implying something deeper.
Like a crossover.
Yeah, like, because they're like, okay, they mentioned vampires a couple times, so we got vampires coming, because vampires is mentioned in Loki, vampires is mentioned here, Blade's coming.
Yes.
Vampires are coming.
Batman is coming.
So that's what I wanted to know. Is Batman Super Friends coming? That would be kind of cool if some kind of, Disney could totally buy up Warner Brothers DC and like have them, the most epic crossover of all time.
One of the past planets they helped the Celestials destroy, saying everyone in Century 6 is going to die. It's too late. We can't save them. Century 6 is actually a lesser planet for Marvel Comics, a planet whose population ends up getting sold into slavery. Gilgamesh and Kingo both use Odin's name in place of God, and then Kingo mentions Thor.
Thor used to follow me around when he was a little kid. Now he's a famous Avenger and won't return my calls.
Meaning Thor and other Asgardians may be aware of the Eternals on Earth. Sprite Solutions did earlier show a Viking ship, and 575 BC would have been long before Norse Vikings on Earth were ever around, so she might have been referencing their friends, the Asgardians, and these two groups of people might have known each other, which makes us now wonder, what are the Celestials' relationship with the Asgardians? In the Marvel Comics, the Asgardians were a special group that the Celestials created from an extra mutation cycle, designed to reflect the mythology of the people they protect. So we'll see if this history comes up in Thor Love and Thunder, with characters like Gore the God Butcher, who carries a special sword that, in the comics, did sever the head of the Celestial Nowhere.
That's
and
who
they bring
I was
up the
thinking
Avengers.
Did you notice that Gilgamesh, or Don Lee, is basically the same dude he is in Train to Busan? He just arms up and starts punching shit.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. But instead of like duct tape and scotch tape or whatever and cardboard, he's got like a really badass
superpower.
Yeah.
So now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, who do you think's gonna lead the Avengers?
I could lead them.
Yeah, they tell Icarus that AJAC didn't even choose him to lead them. And Icarus laughs it off, but he does seem a bit stung.
Yeah.
I think it's because he still feels pretty guilty about what he did to AJAC. It's also interesting that Sprite just called Steve Captain Rogers, meaning they must have been aware of him back in the 40s when he was still an Army soldier. Maybe also a nod to the fact that Captain America in the MCU is now technically Sam Wilson. ACHARA reveals the dark truth to Cersei, that the emergence is the hatching of a sleeping celestial nestled inside Earth called TIAMUT, and that all the celestials are born by gestating inside host planets, feeding on the energy of the planet's life forms, and then emerge when they reach a critical energy level, and then the celestials recycle that energy to create new suns and new galaxies. So Tiamat being secretly buried inside Earth comes directly from the Marvel Comics, in which Tiamat the Dreaming Celestial arises from under San Francisco. Also gotta say, nice to call one accurately for a change.
Wait, what? Call what accurately? I missed that.
Just, I guess.
Oh, himself.
Yeah.
So Tiamat being secretly buried inside Earth comes directly from the Marvel Comics, in which Tiamat the Dreaming Celestial arises from under San Francisco. Also gotta say, nice to call one accurately for a change.
Oh, nice to call one accurately. I think that maybe Eric Voss predicted it.
That was one of the things I told him at the movie premiere. Watching the movie, I'm like, wow, there's a lot Eric Voss predicted in this movie that actually came to fruition. It's kind of crazy. Like a lot of the stuff he was calling out in his breakdown of the trailers actually happened in the movie almost to a T.
It was him crashing up Disco. Also gotta say, nice to call one accurately for a change. ACHARA shows him crashing up through the crust of the Earth shortly after the planet's population resurges after Bruce Banner ended the blip in Avengers Endgame. And in that moment, you can see specific population centers suddenly repopulating, including a little bright spot on Wakanda. As Tiamat's giant hand reaches up through the surface, you can see the city electrical grids suddenly flickering out. Just a frightening example of scale in the billions of lives that would have been lost. ACHARA also reveals that the Eternals are not from the planet Olympia, but they are actually memoryless synthetic beings sent to host planets with celestial seeds in order to make sure intelligent life continues to evolve, protecting that life from the deviants, whom the Celestials also created, initially sent to clear out the apex predators on that planet. ACHARA mentions losing control of the deviants as they evolved, and we see what looks like some Skrulls. These shape-shifting Skrulls were actually the deviant race on that planet, thus the link with the deviants, well, less developed shape-shifting abilities.
That's why, okay, that makes a lot of sense as to why
Karun,
yeah, then that he should be a deviant. I mean, a Skrull. He should totally be a Skrull then. For him to say that's beautiful, I don't know. It could easily be chucked up. It could easily be chucked up to him just being fascinated.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's suspect.
It's quite possible.
On that planet, thus the link with the deviants, well, less developed shape-shifting abilities in this movie. The Eternals are constructed in a world forge that stores their memories from past lives. Cersei actually sees an assembly line of her past selves, production design evoking the partly formed AI robots in the movie Ex Machina. So at this point in the movie may be where Eternals either loses you or hooks you. For me, hook, line, and sinker.
Well, I kind of got reminded of the Tom Cruise film, Oblivion was the name of the movie. Anyway, it's probably tangential at best. That's what I sort of got reminded of more than Deus Ex Machina or whatever it was called.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, yeah.
I think for me, when I saw that, I did kind of go, oh, it kind of looks like Ex Machina, and then quickly moved on.
Oh, okay.
The way that they're like, she's half formed and stuff, she did look like Alicia Vikander in the movie.
It's similar to the way Terrence Malick's Tree of Life departs its earthbound drama for a macroscopic interlude halfway through the movie. This sudden expository spectacle is designed to stun and to overwhelm us, make us ask ourselves, well, what do we matter then? And in the case of the story, to shock Cersei into blind, trembling obedience, just like our Book of Genesis is really designed to do. Really posing this movie's deeper question: can one's purpose be defied for love? A debate that plays out among the Eternals. Kingo argues, we're not the bad guys, we did our jobs. One thing I really love about this movie, the conflict arises from everyone pursuing their purpose, be it survival, reproduction, or protection. It's an elemental Darwinian struggle, a battle of justifiable ideals. It actually evokes a classic Greek drama like Aeschylus's The Eumenides, in which immortal Greek gods debate the sins and worthiness of the human mortals. Eternals. It's the same debate of free will versus determinism playing out with Loki and Kang, with the Watcher of What If, and it raises the bar of intellect in the MCU, and I am here for it. Ultimately, Cersei sides with the rationale Cap used in Infinity War, that the lives of others are never worth trading, therefore the emergence must be stopped. And they find Druig in a remote village of the Amazon, mind-controlling humans, an idyllic cult free from conflict. It's actually kind of fun to see how humanity is evolving in its own microcosm there. There's a blacksmith hammering away, reminding us of Tony Stark in the cave in the first Iron Man. We hear Cersei's ringtone, it's Lizzo's Juice, and Kingo and Druig face off.
Kingo, the movie star. I've directed some things too.
Yeah, Kingo says he's made some online content, but doesn't do it for the views. Hey, neither do we, Kingo. I'm just kidding. We totally do it for the views. We are horny for views here. We are the Eros of views. Cersei tells Dane to call his uncle and make amends with him, a nod to Dane Whitman's uncle, Nathan Garrett in the comics, the previous Black Knight, who's actually a villainous character. Historically, the bearer of the Ebony Blade, not a good guy, which is why Dane may not get along with him. In the comics, Dane actually inherits a castle from his uncle, and that's where he finds the Ebony Blade. In fact, I think that's where that second post-credit scene is taking place. Then deviants attack the village. Kingo uses his finger guns to explode one of their heads, while Cersei turns another into a tree, showing that she actually can transform sentient beings despite her belief otherwise. But the alpha deviant kills Gilgamesh and absorbs his life force, turning that deviant into a more humanoid talking form named Crow, the leader of the deviants in the comics, who's voiced by Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgård, who accuses the Eternals of hunting his kind, saying, "You are not saviors, Eternals, you are murderers, and you'll float too!" But since Druig doesn't think he's powerful enough to mind control a whole celestial, they decide to seek out Phastos, whom we flash back to at the site of Hiroshima, August 8th, 1945, the day American forces dropped an atomic bomb on the city. And standing in the ashes, Ajax consoles Phastos, who cries, "I did this if my technology hadn't helped in the past. Druig was right. This was a mistake. These people, they're not worth saving." His regret is based on that of J. Robert Oppenheimer, one of the scientists whose research led to the atomic bomb, something he deeply regretted and fiercely criticized in his later years. Now, Phastos lives with his husband, Ben, and son, Jack, who mistakes Icarus for Superman. Phastos tells his family that their names are Isaac and Sylvia, a nod to their human aliases in the comics, Isaac Ike Harris and Sylvia Cersei. On the table is a Star Wars book. Now, Star Wars has already popped up in the MCU before. Peter Parker is obsessed with Star Wars. He cites Empire and Civil War. He collects Star Wars Legos and figurines. And then, of course, Cap lists Star Wars in his notebook. But here, along with a Superman reference, it's just another piece of pop culture rooted in eternal linked mythology.
What are the
like
little
George Lucas
toys there?
definitely based Luke Skywalker's hero's journey on Arthurian legend, the same Arthur known by the Eternals and by Dane's ancestors. Testing the walls of Phastos' safe house, Icarus also tests the table.
I bet you've built the perfect safe house.
I don't know what those toys are. They look generic.
Well, I thought that
it looks
it was
like a
like-
PlayStation controller and some chips.
I thought it was like a baby Iron Man and Green Lantern. I don't know.
Green Lantern's not from the MCU.
Okay, never mind then. It's just green. Do you know what I mean? They look like little superheroes, but they're probably nothing.
What's this even made of? Vibranium?
For Icarus to assume Phastos made a table out of vibranium, just another example how things like Wakanda vibranium tech might have been aided by Phastos. And he may have been the source who supplied Howard Stark with that vibranium for Cap's shield in World War II, but then maybe quit helping the United States defenses when they used his fission technology for the Manhattan Project. As
interesting.
Phastos leaves his family, Skeeter Davis's The End of the World plays, which we heard in the first trailer, and then they return to the Iraqi archaeological dig site where the ruins of Babylon do rest in our world. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, here he raises the domo from the earth, and inside they find Makari, whom Kingo calls Miss Havisham, a reference to the crazy old hoarder from Charles Dickens' Great Expectations.
Right.
Makari's wearing a shirt for H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. You think about it, a pretty similar plot about extraterrestrial world enders who end up not being able to cut it because the germs on this planet are just too resistant. Now, as a speedster, Makari has apparently just gathered various historical artifacts, including an ancient Egyptian statue of the deity Bastet, who is an influence on the Wakandan panther deity of Bast,
That's
a
right.
painting called La Liaison de Musique, which actually hangs in the Louvre, a Roman imperial eagle staff with SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the People's Republic of Rome, a bundle of scrolls, maybe from the Lost Library of Alexandria, a Big Mac in its carton, the Holy Grail, the same design from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a statue called the Chimera of Arezzo, which in real life resides in the National Archaeological Museum in Florence, a throne that I thought might have been the United Kingdom's St. Edward's chair, their throne, but it's not that one, it's just one similar to it, and a medieval suit of armor, one that you might find in the UK UK's Tower of London. Remember Happy Hogan and the rest using some of that armor to fend off the Stark drones. And then a PlayStation VR headset. Athena swings around a sword that Sprite thinks is the Ebony Blade. Again, Dane Whitman's Black Knight's family sword. But Athena corrects her, it's Excalibur, the sword of King Arthur from legend. And Sprite says, well, Arthur always did have a crush on you. Meanwhile, the others trade Twinkies for the Emerald Tablet, showing that Makkari did eventually get her hands on it.
Just a small fun fact, if you guys have ever paid attention to Carl Sagan, he has a book called Cosmos and a show called Cosmos, which was later done again by Neil deGrasse Tyson. According to Carl Sagan, in both his book and show Cosmos, where the Library of Alexandria was, a lot of people from different parts of the world would stop in at port. And the one thing that was required of them was to give some kind of knowledge. And so that's why the Library of Alexandria was so filled up with like so much information, so many different scrolls from all over the world. It got burned to the ground. And because it got burned to the ground, it set back, according to Carl Sagan, it set back the human race by like 500 years.
I believe it.
Had we not burned down the Library of Alexandria, we would be 500 years ahead of where we are right now.
Yeah, knowledge is valuable.
Yeah.
Phastos invents new bracelets to help them form the UNI-MIND to hack TIAMUT, which is a term for all the Eternals combining their consciousness into a big brain that can fight off other big forces in the comics. We flash back 6 days before when Icarus visited Ajax on her ranch, where she tells him about the oncoming emergence, and he's like, awesome, great, mission accomplished. Let's pack it home, boys. But she says 5 years ago, Thanos delayed the emergence. Now, since we just learned that Thanos and his brother Eros were both Eternals of Titan, this may reframe Thanos' goal of erasing half of all life across the universe instead as a way of disrupting celestial reproduction. I've said it before, I'll say it again, Thanos did nothing wrong. He had a plan. The guy was on our side. Had we only listened. But since Ajax was a softie who wanted to stop the emergence, Icarus transports her to the worst place on Earth, Alaska. Just kidding, I've never been there. But there's a melted glacier with some oil workers being fed on by unfrozen.
It's hard to believe that Thanos had the Celestials in mind with his plan because he never mentioned them.
Why would someone like Thanos, he believes himself to be so above everyone else, why would he deign to tell anyone about his plans?
Because he was open to telling everybody about the efficiency of his plan. If you take out half the population, there are more resources to go around. So if he was so verbose and willing, to put forth those ideas, why not mention the Celestials in the process?
Maybe that was just a sort of a cover. Because no one knows about the Celestials. You're going to come in there and just be like, hey, so there's this other thing called Celestials. Let me try and explain them to you. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, whatever. I don't even believe in God, let alone Celestials.
I feel like there's a little bit of retconning going on here, honestly.
Maybe. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Deviants. But the Deviants now attack Ajax, killing her, stealing her healing power, and then regrouping, spreading south. Now, as the emergence begins, Makkari zips all around the world looking for that hatching point. I love the way they depict her speedster abilities in this movie. The world zips past her rapidly, including we see her pass the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro, as opposed to often how we see speedsters in other movies where they use relative slow motion to show super speed. Both look really cool. This is just a whole new way of showing it. I really appreciated it. And then she finds that point at an island in the Indian Ocean, and if you look behind her in the background, there are a couple oil platforms drilling away. I love this detail. It just gives this battle a backdrop of a reminder of just one way part of humanity doesn't care about this planet that the Eternals are fighting to save. Icarus reveals his betrayal of Ajax, and Sprite ends up siding with him. Of course she does. Now, Kingo I thought was interesting.
The oil tankers thing, I like that detail and I do appreciate it, but it wasn't emphasized in the movie. It was very fleeting, and I didn't process that idea even remotely, even in the slightest, until Eric Voss mentioned it just now. For all the exposition and philosophical debate in the movie, you'd think that that'd be one thing that they'd bring up, which is they're killing themselves anyway.
Yeah, sure, maybe a character like maybe Icarus could have brought it up. Why are they even worth saving? Like they're killing their planet anyway.
Now Kingo I thought was interesting, does side with Icarus in theory. He can't let go of his function, but out of not wanting to hurt his family, he benches himself from the fight. Sprite Houdinis herself and Icarus out of here. Actually, in the credits montage, there is a poster for a Houdini magic show with Sprite whispering in his ear, suggesting she might have influenced the great magician and escape artist. So backup plan, Phastos has to extract Cersei's sphere as kind of a backdoor hack to Tiamut, setting up this final battle on the volcanic island. Icarus crashes the domo, Cersei stalls the eruption, Makkari and Phastos use some awesome moves to pin Icarus to hold him down. Ajax seems to appear to Cersei, but it's all a trick by Sprite, who stabs her in the back, and the druid clubs Sprite in the head. Athena battles Crow in a cave, and manages to conjure blades to slice him apart, but still Tiamat emerges. It looks epic in scale. I loved how this looked, and Cersei has to combine her strength with the others of the UNI-MIND to reverse Midas Tiamat and turn his golden form into marble. Icarus breaks free of Phastos' restraints and angrily fires his laser eyes into the sky, evoking an iconic frame of Icarus from the comics. Icarus watches this go down, and memories of Cersei rewind through their time together, back to their wedding day, back to Babylon, and to the first moment they set eyes on Earth while they were still in its orbit, and Cersei said, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Beautiful. The same word Icarus taught himself to say in Akkadian or Babylonian, whatever version of the language it was back then, to Cersei the day that he proposed.
I just want to make a quick comment about that flashback sequence. I was annoyed by it because for having spent so many years together, like a considerable amount of time, I wish that they had shot just extra scenes just to pepper into that flashback, because the only scenes that we saw in his series of tracking back to their first moment in the ship, Domo, looking over Earth, all we saw was stuff we already saw.
Right.
It's like they just rewound the tape in the movie, but like presumably there was a lot of other instances that they spent together, beautiful moments that they could have shown us of, you know, their developing relationship or whatever.
And so he fulfills his mythological destiny and flies way too close to the sun, like way too close, like into it. But despite this final conflict, Cersei can't help but feel grateful to the Celestial she just killed on the day of its birth, crediting it for her successful UNI-MIND link. She says, "Tiamat joined our UNI-MIND. We became one even with Icarus and Sprite, and that's all because of Tiamat." Just interesting to think that Tiamat might have been okay with what Cersei was doing to it. Like, not all Celestials are on board with Arisham's way of doing things, and might be more willing to grant the underlings, like the Eternals, more free will. Just gives us hope for whatever Celestial Eros is about to summon with his sphere, answering the question of this movie's premise: our original purposes can be and should be defied for love. And in the post-credits scene we learn it's all thanks to the god of love. Cersei turns Sprite human, allowing her the chance to grow into an adult and live the mortal life she always wanted. A happy ending from another classic fairy tale, Pinocchio.
I think that thing that they did there where they turned Sprite into a human, I was wondering that as the movie was coming to a close. I was like, okay, well, Sprite is still here and the actress herself is only going to continue growing up.
Right.
And so it's going to be really hard to continue having her character going forward because she is just going to grow up into like full woman form. I thought that was smart too, although I heard that also happened in the comic, right? But like to just have her be human so that she can grow, so they don't have to like try and use CGI.
It just seems a little bit odd to me that there was no way that Cersei could like go, okay, we're gonna turn you human temporarily, but then we're gonna change you back once you're 18, like so you can stay 18 forever, because that's what everybody wants, you know, or 21 forever. It just seems odd, like, okay, so now I sentence you to death. It's like, no, how about like
no,
she
sentenced her to life.
Oh my god, she had that. It's just in a form that, you know, a container form that she hated.
Right, yeah, but she couldn't have all the things, you know, she couldn't have a relationship, because if she had a relationship...
I'm in agreement with everything you're saying.
Right.
I'm in agreement with all of that. What I'm saying is, why does she have to live and then die? Why can't it be that she just ages her a little bit
there's a limit to the magic, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, well, you could stop a celestial from being born, but you can't just age her 5 years? What the hell? God.
Blue Fairy, and there are life she always wanted. A happy ending from another classic fairy tale, Pinocchio and the Blue Fairy, and there are no strings on her. Hey, that's an Ultron thing. Athena departs Earth on the Domo alongside Druig and Makari. They're all seeking out Eternals on other planets, while Kingo, Sprite, and Cersei stay on Earth. But in the final scene, as Dane begins to tell Cersei that his family history is complicated and that it is his birthright to be the Black Knight, clouds form in the sky and ACHARA appears, zipping Cersei up to him along with Phastos and Kingo, telling them, "You have chosen to sacrifice a celestial for the people of this planet. I will spare them, but your memories will determine if they are worthy to live, and I will return in judgment," allowing ACHARA to complete his arc to become his title from the comics, ACHARA the Judge. So this way, the film kind of leaves it open-ended whether humanity is worthy of its salvation, almost like a challenge to us to earn our right to exist. Now, if the movie Eternals didn't speak to you, that's totally okay. But is it the worst Marvel movie? Hell no, my friends. This film's deeper themes hit me hard, and I believe we will see the benefits of its contributions for years to come in the MCU.
I will agree with him. It's not the worst. Marvel movie. It's not my favorite, but there are a lot of things that are like really nice about it, and it's interesting and thought-provoking.
It's a weird thing to say, like, what is the worst Marvel movie? Why do we have to establish that there is a worst or even a best? It's like they all have things that are really cool or not cool about them. I can pick issues in every single one, but I can also find entertaining things in every single one.
Even Dark World?
Yeah, there was entertaining moments in Dark World. I'm not that type of dude though to like rank something from best to worst. I can just tell you what my favorite one is.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I know for sure this is not one of my favorites, but I think that there are many things that give it merit. It is kind of, a little bit more thinky.
I don't mind thinky. I just didn't think that the story was well told in this particular one.
I agree with you, yeah.
Like, I don't mind large concepts. I love The Matrix. I love Inception, Interstellar. I love thinky concepts. I think it's cool, but you have to have like heart rooted, like something to root us into the story. And I just don't feel like they really accomplished that here.
Sure.
I feel like it was kind of all over the place and messy and convoluted, to be frank.
Well, there was a lot, like considering that this breakdown video is over half an hour long. Like, there was a lot in there that they had to kind of talk about and they had to deal with, and also a lot of references and just so many characters as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense. It was a tall order.
I thought that Eric Voss did a thorough job of breaking down this film. He certainly helped to bring a lot more understanding of the film, because I watch it and I was just like, in order for me to really buy into a lot of these larger concepts that the film is trying to give, I have to be rooted into the story, like I've been saying. And so like with The Matrix, I was just hooked, right? And so then I was able to buy into all the philosophical debates because I was already hooked into the way the story was being told.
Right.
If that was bad, I don't know that I would have cared as much about all the philosophical conversations happening in the film. I would have just been bored by it. Here, I don't even remember most of what were philosophical debates about humanity in the movie. It just kind of washed over me. But listening to what Eric Voss is saying, I completely agree with him. The consequences or the fallout of this film is going to, it's got a huge ripple effect for the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, for sure.
But likewise with Loki, right? Like Loki and then this, it's like the impact of this on the stories to come is huge and is unquestionable. And so that is why I keep recommending it to people. Like you need to watch this, even though I don't think it's one of the best MCU films that's out there. I do think it's, again, the concepts are very, very interesting concepts. I love the ideas here. And I'm just hoping that on the next go round with these characters, with these creatures, that it's just better executed in a way that is that's more of a hook for me.
Sure.
Because like he said, it got him hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, oh, I wish that's what happened with me, because I didn't feel that way. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you to New Rockstars for allowing us to react to this. Very much appreciate it. Y'all, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, and vote this up to let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.